Somero is a provider of laser screeds. And a laser screed is an invention that allows you to make extremely flat floors in what's called wide placement. And flat floors is very important because there are specifications that are written and measurable by the architects and the engineers to allow a floor to be put down so it is flat enough to handle all kinds of racking in all kinds of different structures. This is a mechanical piece of equipment. Anybody can copy a mechanical piece of equipment. They can reverse engineer it and they can sell it. One of the things that makes us so dominant in the marketplace is that we are not a machine builder. We assemble a laser screed, but what we do that's important to the customer is we teach him how to get in business and how to make money and meet the specifications. So in the process of going through this, we spend a lot of time with the customer right up front, talking to him and finding out what is important to him in his business. Does he have aspirations of becoming very large? Does he want to stay small? What are his financial capabilities? What is his skill set with his employees? Because generally, the way that they are putting down concrete before they buy our equipment is they're doing it manually. And on a lot of very large jobs, they may have 20 to 25 people. When you buy a laser screed, you're going to need 8 or 9 people. But those 8 or 9 people are going to have different skill sets than the 25 you had. So we have to assure him that we're going to help him and train him and his employees so that they can not only operate the piece of equipment, but they have to operate the piece of equipment and put down the concrete floor in its entirety that meets the specifications that the building owner and the architect have specified. If you don't meet those specifications, the penalties are severe because you either have to grind the floor, which is very hard to do, or you have to tear out the slab. So it is very important to this customer that he has the confidence to go about doing the job and doing it properly every step of the way. The other problem you have with concrete is that it sets up in about an hour. So if you're out there screeding the concrete and all of a sudden you have a problem with the machine, you then very quickly, you being the operator, which is sometimes the owner, have to figure out, how do I fix what's wrong? We give free training with the machine. We come out and we spend anywhere from 3 to 5 days. We prefer to have you come to our schools, which are located in China, in the United States. We prefer that you come and sit down with us. In a lot of cases, that's not entirely possible. But we will train you on how to operate everything. But most of the time we spend is on teaching you how to overcome little problems that come about on the job site. And a lot of times they're very simple things. This is equipment that operates off of a beam of light, a laser beam. And that is received by 2 receivers on the machine. If that laser beam happens to bounce off the windshield of a cab, of a truck, or a local building, you're going to get different readings on the machine. The operator has to see that and instantly say, how do I fix that? A lot of times they maybe had training 8 months or 12 months ago. They may not remember exactly what they've got to do to fix it. And we tell them, if you can't figure it out in the first 5 or 10 minutes, you need to call us on the phone. And we have phone service 24/7. And we guarantee you when you call that you will have a certified engineer on the phone in 10 minutes. And we have a translation system built into the phone system where we can talk in 65 different languages. And that is how we can ensure that you get the job done right. 95% of the time, we can solve your problem over the phone. If your problem turns out to be a hydraulic pump that's not working, and you don't happen to have a spare with you, then we have to air freight you a part and get it there for you the next day. It is this ability to service our customers and to ensure their success that is one of the great parts of our relationship with the customer. And it's one of the reasons that everybody reads about competitors. The The competitors in China are a very popular topic of conversation. The Chinese customers said to me one day, we were on a job site and a couple of the competitors were there watching the job site, and they said to me, do you know the difference between you and them? And I said, no, I don't. And they said, he's a machine builder, you're in the laser screed business. We're in the business of making the customer successful, because if the customer's not successful, we're not going to be successful. And the only business we're in is the laser screeding business. Let me just tell you a little bit about a typical Somero customer. When you think about a concrete contractor, and that's the name that they go by on a worldwide basis, a concrete contractor is just like a plumber or electrician. It's a very specialty business. All he does is put down concrete floors. He's got 20 to 40 employees, and he does roughly $5 to $10 million a year in revenue. The only way he makes any money at all is if that laser screed runs. So the laser screed is the absolute key to his business, and therefore we are very important to him. And we're important more in just selling the equipment. It's very important that we continue to make him successful, because as he grows his business, our business will grow also. The concrete contracting industry that they work in, or market segment they work in, is the commercial market segment. Or some places it's called non-residential. We are not in the residential part. The commercial part has warehouses, hospitals, schools, manufacturing plants, retail stores, and it's all different size slabs, anywhere from 5,000 square foot slabs to million square foot slabs. And we have different pieces of equipment that are targeted to different segments of the market. And think of a segment as a size. And we'll get a chance later on to show you the different pieces of equipment and the different categories that they fall into. Now, the building owner is the person that ultimately benefits from this concrete floor. In any building, the most important part of a building is the floor. All of the work that's going to be done in any building is done on the floor, whether it's forklift trucks transporting product, whether it's people walking across the floors. Whatever it is, it happens on the floor of that building. And when you have a floor that's been built manually, they can do about 10,000 square feet a day. When you use a laser screed, you can do 40 to 50,000 square feet a day. So it's a good 4 times more productive. When you do things manually and you only do 10,000 square feet and you come back the next day and you put another 10,000 square foot slab next to it, those 2 slabs do not join because one has already cured. So you end up with what they call a construction joint between the 2 slabs. Concrete shrinks over 18 to 24 months. So what you end up getting is an opening between those slabs. As you drive forklift trucks over them, the hard wheels on the forklift trucks hit the edges of the slab and they start to break down the slab. At the same time, they're breaking down the wheels on the forklift truck. So pretty soon you have a building that has a lot of repair that has to go into the joints and onto the forklift trucks. And putting that repair in there is not easy because the slab continues to shrink. So as you're going through this process, the efficiency of the building is slowing down. And as an example, if you own a warehouse and you're the building owner of a warehouse and you're renting out that warehouse, the only way you're going to get income from that warehouse is if it's in the right location and the person that's renting it can move his goods in and out of there as efficiently as possible. Because there's no value added in a warehouse. You take it off a truck, you put it on a rack, you take it off the rack, you put it back on a truck. The value for the person that's renting that building is that he can efficiently take it off one truck and put it on another truck for delivery. And if you have to slow down the warehouse because there's problems with the floor, that's going to make you less efficient. For the building owner, if he ever has to re-rent that building, the people that are going to rent it from next time are going to be asking, is this a laser screed building? Because they know that they can then put their racking up there and not have to worry about whether they can pick the pallets 30 feet up in the air. So the building owner is the one that gets a great deal of benefits from it. Now, we sell in over 93 countries around the world. And when we get to parts of the world, when we get to new places, Asia is the latest one for us. We got to Asia a number of years ago. Nobody had ever heard of a laser screed. Nobody had ever heard of specifications for a flat floor. And part of the way that we get started in these countries is that the large multinationals, like IKEA or B&Q or any of them, Prologis, they're building buildings in China. And they want to build the buildings with the same specifications they have them here in the UK. So when we came to China, they were very glad to see us. And we put on a group of engineers who go around spending time with architects and engineers and building owners explaining the benefits of wide placement and laser screeding. And at the same time, as we start to develop a customer base, we explain to them what their future is. And their future is, if they can learn to put down the floors properly, we can introduce them to Prologis, who is looking for a contractor that can put down a floor properly. So it's a marriage for both of them, because they both of them need each other. And that's how we continue to grow the markets in places like Asia. When you look at differentiators, we sell and service in these 93 countries direct. They're all our employees. And we do that because of the relationship that we want to have with our customers. And we want to know them, and we want to know what their problems are. They are also the source of all of our new product development. We talk to them constantly, we survey them. What are the issues that you deal with every day that we might be able to invent a product that would make your life easier and more profitable? And so when you take that, along with the customer support and technical support that we provide, these are real big differentiators for anybody who's thinking of competing with us. Because one of the common questions we've got is, you make so much money, how come nobody has ever come out and tried to compete with you? And that's a very logical question. Well, they have. The first competitor we had was in 1989. He was a Somero customer in Holland that owned 2 laser screeds. And he said, I can build a laser screed cheaper. He probably can't build it cheaper, but he can sell it cheaper when you're getting 55% gross margins. And he sold a few machines. And people found out that when they wanted to get advice on how do I quote this slab, or can you come out and help me put down this particular slab? I've never done one like this before. Guy said, I don't know how to put down slabs. I just build machines. And a lot of concrete work is done at early hours of the morning. In many places in the world, it starts at midnight so that the concrete trucks can get there in time before traffic begins. You got a problem with your machine, so you call his office. You get his answering machine. He's home sleeping. He doesn't come to work till 7 o'clock in the morning. Or you want to get a spare part. Well, I don't have one on the shelf. Let me call my vendor and see if I can get you one next week. Those aren't the answers you're looking for, because when you have to shut down a job, you have put the entire construction schedule of that project behind. And if you go to the superintendent for the main contractor and tell him you're not going to be able to finish the floor for a week or a week and a half, you're probably not going to work for him again. So these are all the pieces that go together that make it very, very difficult for anybody to compete strongly with us, because they can have the piece of equipment, but we have 30 years of institutional knowledge of how to operate the equipment, how to put down concrete slabs that meet all the specifications of the owners and the architects and the engineers. And it's very, very important to our customer. And once again, if he's not successful, we sell him a piece of equipment that doesn't work, everybody's going to know about that. And he's certainly not going to buy our piece of equipment again. So we are totally passionate and dedicated about making sure that he succeeds. We have a variety of different pieces of equipment. And the best way to think about the sizes is it depends upon how big a slab you're doing. So we have 2 types of machines. We have the boom screeds. It actually reaches out over the concrete, and the operator draws the screed head back. It's a 20-foot reach with a 12-foot head. And as it's coming back, it does the screeding. And that's very highly productive. It's an 18,000-pound machine. You have to have a big flatbed truck to take it to your job site. But that's what you would use to put down 40 or 50,000 square feet in a day. The ride-on machines are geared to riding in the concrete, and they're geared for smaller jobs. So the two machines, the 940 and the 485, you can take a ramp and put them in the back of a pickup truck. And that makes it a whole lot less expensive for you as a contractor and a whole lot easier for everybody to use. The one machine that's there, the S158, is one that we just introduced this year in China. And I know people have heard about the Chinese market and the competitors that are there. There are competitors in China. They are great at copying whatever we produce. But the people that are copying machines in China and the market they're focused on is not the market where there's specifications. They are using these machines for productivity only. In our new machine, the S158, is built and priced to compete in that market for productivity only. All the rest of our machines are working in the market segment that is there to meet specifications. And there are no competitors in the Chinese market in that part of the marketplace. We have a variety of other products that we offer. Just quickly touching on a couple of them. There's a patented 3D software system that allows you to screed in 3 dimensions. Easiest way to visualize that is to think about a parking lot, which means the parking lots normally follow the contour of the land, but then they have to be shaped to go to the drainage system so you don't end up with big puddles in the parking lot. With this 3D system, you can just take a few readings on the site and you put it into the computer, and as the operator is drawing back the laser screed, it will automatically contour it to the contour design in the parking garage. We have some other machines that do spreading of hardeners over the concrete slab, which is sometimes required. The other thing that we offer is if you owned a machine for a number of years and you decide you want to upgrade to new technology, you can trade that in. And when you trade that into us, we will give you a value for it and sell you a new machine. We then take that machine and completely remanufacture it. We strip off all the components, we completely shot blast it and paint it again. We test all the components. The ones that do not pass the test, we replace with brand new ones. We put it back together and we sell it with a new product warranty, generally at about 60% of the price of the new one. And this is very important to people in emerging markets. When we sit down with people in emerging markets, we want to find out about their financial capabilities. We want to find out about their ambitions. In the construction business, everybody wants to own something very big and something new. What we sit down and tell them is, look, we've talked about your business, you've told us about your financial capabilities, you've told us what you want to do in the business that you think you have at hand. You're not ready to buy the brand new big boy. You need to spend 60% of that and get yourself a remanufactured one. We'll work with you for a couple of years. You'll learn how to do laser screeding. You'll learn how to do it well. You'll make some money, and then you'll be ready to buy a new one. And that's a very typical case. Typically 2 or 3 years after that, they will come back and trade that in or expand their business by buying a second machine that is brand new. We've already talked about the importance of the quality floor. So with that, let me turn it over to John Yuncza, and he'll give you some of the financial highlights.
Okay, thank you, Jack. The top line growth was 13%, which was very broad-based on a product basis and on a geographical basis. We had very solid conversion of that revenue growth into EBITDA. Our conversion rate was 50%, EBITDA conversion rate in 2016. And we had very good operational leverage. We continue to make investments in operating costs to support our growth, but also maximize our margins. We were able to obtain a 2% increase in the EBITDA margin to 31% for the full year. And all of that sort of followed down to the bottom line, where we had profits before tax, adjusted net income and adjusted net income per share all grew over 20% in 2016. And the business itself is very cash generative, so we were able to grow our cash flow from operating activities by 17% to just under $17 million for the year, which translated to an improved financial position. We had net cash of just over $20 million at the end of the year, and we increased our payout ratio in March of this year to 40% of adjusted earnings, which translated to 11.1 cents full-year dividend, which was a 61% increase over the prior year. On slide 9, operational highlights. As I mentioned, the growth in 2016 was very broad geographically and on a product basis. We had 4 of our 6 territories grew, which was led by our core territories of North America, Europe, and China, and Australia, which is included in our rest of world, also had a meaningful contribution to growth. Growth by product lines was solid pretty much across the board. Boomed ride-on screeds were both up, with ride-on screed products growing 15% versus the prior year. Particularly strong performance in our 3D profiler system, which grew just under 40%. And then other revenues, which are primarily driven by parts and accessories, which are aftermarket sales to support the installed base of equipment out there, grew just under 30% for the year. An important factor for growth for us continues to be new products. We launched the S940 and the S10A, both of which were launched at the beginning of 2016. They represented growth 4.6 million on a net basis for the year, which is an important factor, and we continue to bring new products to the market. We, as Jack mentioned before, we launched the S158 in China at the very end of 2016, and early 2017 we launched the SP16, which is a concrete hose line pooler placement system, as well as we launched the next generation 3D profiler system, which is an important product for us. And then lastly, we continue to make investments to support the long-term growth of the business. We completed construction of our Fort Myers headquarters and training facility in early 2016, and then just recently constructed our hands-on training environment, which is the home of the Somero Concrete Institute, which is based in Fort Myers. We completed construction on that in the second quarter of this year, and just opened the institute within the past couple of months. In terms of an overview of sales by geography, North America is the largest market for us. It was just over 70% of revenues in 2016, growing 15% over the prior year. Europe represents the next largest installed base of equipment for us. Historically, it's been our second largest market. Previous peak sales in Europe prior to the financial crisis in 2007 was about $18 million in dollars in that year. Since then, we've had a number of price increases and some price inflation. So in equivalent dollars today, that would represent about $25 million in annual sales. We had meaningful contributions from China and the Middle East, and have a significant presence in Latin America and a number of the other territories that we categorize as rest of world, with Australia being the strongest performer in 2016 for us. In terms of sales by product, as I mentioned, we had very balanced growth across the product categories. We have very similar margin profiles across our products, with the one exception being the remanufactured machines, which we sell at a lesser margin, typically in the 25 to 30% gross margin range, whereas all the other product lines are similar to our overall gross margin, which is in the mid-50s. We were really encouraged by just the breadth of the growth across all the different lines. What's important for us historically as we've evolved the business, we've continued to diversify our product lines, which enables us to capture growth in almost any market condition. So depending upon the project sizes that are prevalent in the market, we have a product that meets that need. So that positions us well, we believe, in the future. In terms of the operating results, a couple of highlights. For 2016, our gross margin improved to just under 57%. 57% was our previous peak, if you go back to the 2007 timeframe. Those margins are, we believe, a very sustainable level of gross margin. We've made some improvements in the past few years to get to that level based on some price increases and productivity gains. We view the current margin level to be sustainable, but we see modest upside to that given some of the price increases we've already taken in the past 3 to 4 years out of the financial crisis. Importantly, we continue to make investments in operating expenses, which are primarily going to be investments in people as we increased our headcount. We generally average about 2 million a year as the target. In 2016, we were a little bit more than 2 million increase year over year. And then as a US-based company, our effective tax rate is 34%, which is the US statutory rate. We expect that to be consistent going forward and to be in the mid 30% range for taxes. And then importantly on capital expenditures, the past couple of years in 15 and 16, we had some elevated capital expenditures which related to the building projects we undertook. We expanded our Houghton operations facility, which took place at the end of 2015, and then we constructed the headquarters in Fort Myers and training facility in 2016, which all contributed to the elevated CapEx. Our general run rate is absent these building projects is more in the $1 million to $1.5 million range. One of the benefits of this company is that we're not a capital-intensive business. We're an assembly operation, so we don't have to make a lot of investments in capital expenditures. We did, in the recent trading update, announce that we'd be increasing the office space in our Fort Myers campus as we've continued to grow for a cost of about $1.3 million. We expect that cost to take place in early 2018 by the time we get through the permitting process. And then once past that project, we expect to revert back to the normal run rate CapEx of $1 million to $1.5 million. Turning to the balance sheet, the cash generation of the business has enabled us to improve our financial position. So our net cash balance was just over $20 million to end the year in 2016. We, in January, retired the last piece of our debt, so we're now debt-free. We paid off the final piece, which was $1 million. So now we're debt-free. We still maintain our $10 million line of credit with Citizens Bank, which is the financial institution we've had a long-term relationship with, so we feel very secure about that. The most important thing on the balance sheet for us, obviously, we continue to effectively and closely manage our working capital levels, which we've been able to continue to do effectively, which has translated into very solid operating cash flow growth. So on slide 14, on the cash flows, as I mentioned before, part of the working capital management has enabled us to grow our operating cash flows, which was 17% growth year over year, to basically just under $17 million. The uses of cash for us primarily has been the capital expenditures related to the building projects we've undertaken to support the growth of the business, but also the return of cash to shareholders in the form of dividends. And that will continue to increase as we've increased the earnings of the business and increased our payout ratio. So with that, that gets us to the current trading update, which we issued in conjunction with our AGM meeting on Tuesday. From the trading update perspective, the overall business continues to progress well. Most importantly, we were seeing very strong performance coming out of the European market for us. We had some momentum in 2016 that continued to improve, and that's carried over into 2017. And we're pleased with the performance in Europe in that it's been very broad-based, both on a product basis as well as across a number of countries in Europe. So that leaves us very encouraged for the remainder of the year for the European performance. We've also seen solid contributions from the Middle East, Latin America, and some of our rest of world territories, which have contributed meaningfully thus far in the trading this year. In North America, we've seen a continuation of the very solid market fundamentals, which for us is the most important view. And we look at the market conditions, which we're very focused on the non-residential construction market, which is where our customers operate. And our visibility into the marketplace is effectively through the eyes of our customer base, who continue to report very high levels of activity and very solid project pipelines that span 2017 and into 2018. And that has remained solidly intact from what we saw to end 2016 and enter this year. But what we have seen is how that solid market fundamentals has translated into current trading. We've seen some short-term impacts that we've attributed to weather and some project delays, which are also related to some of the political uncertainty, which has caused us to see flat trading in the U.S. So we view this as a short-term issue. We don't see permanent changes in the market fundamentals, which is what we're mostly focused on. So we remain very positive and constructive on the U.S. market. In China, we had a slow start to the year. In China's year really starts after Spring Festival, which really means sort of end of Q1. And we had a slow start coming out of the Spring Festival. However, we have seen some recent signs of improvement and continue to see a very solid long-term growth opportunity in the marketplace. What we've continued to do is top grade our organization. We've made some key hires in the market. We hired a sales manager based in Shanghai late in 2016 who is climbing up the curve and becoming fully ramped up, which is an important part of having strong local management to help grow the territory. So we'll continue to focus on ways to improve our sales execution and market development activities, and we really remain positive and constructive on the market on a long-term basis and do expect to see improvement through the balance of the year. On a product basis, we've seen similar trends to what we experienced in 2016. Good performance in the ride-on screeds as well as the 3D profiler systems, and some really good or encouraging early opportunities with some of the new products we launched, which was the SP16 and the S158 in China. And most importantly for us, we're kind of balancing our long-term investments with some of the short-term optimizing performance. We continue to make additions to our personnel to help support the future growth, hiring positions in sales, customer support, engineering. We've recently approved plans to expand our Fort Myers office building to accommodate these incremental hires. And we've continued to increase our focus on product development by hiring in late 2016 a product development manager who's exclusively focused on upstream activities, identifying new market segments where we think we can leverage our core technology to come up with an engineered solution to create incremental revenue streams for the business. And we've created a lot of formality around that product development process that involves these upstream new market opportunities. So we feel really good about what's in front of us in terms of what we've been seeing. And then the last thing, and probably not the least thing, is as we previously had communicated, exiting 2016, we had $20 million in net cash. We have a stated intention to maintain a net cash reserve on the balance sheet of at least $10 million, which is what we've historically stated. And upon review with the board, and absent opportunities to reinvest a meaningful portion of that excess cash back into the business, we've decided to issue a special dividend, which will be payable on August 14th to shareholders of record as of July 28th in the total amount of $7.5 million, which is 13.3 cents per share. And the factors that went into determining the amount of the special dividend were examining the cash position of the company, looking at the net cash reserve, identifying operational, non-operational cash requirements, as well as some future planned spend. We determined that 7.5 was the appropriate level, and we will plan to continue on an annual basis to review our cash position to determine if there is any future such distributions.
With that, we can take some questions.
You make quite a focus at the start of your presentation on the additional service that you offer to, say, new customers when they buy the equipment. Could you talk a little bit about the economics or the commercial aspects of that service side, whether any revenues particularly associated with that?
No, I mean, there is a little, because they sometimes will buy a contract for us to come out and visit them and service, and would give them a discount on spare parts. But in general, it's all included in the pricing of the machine. We had a decision to make when we first came to the company, knowing that we're a monopoly, and not many of us like working for monopolies because we're afraid we're going to be abused. We had to decide how we were going to set the pricing of the company up. And would we set the prices low but charge them for every phone call and every visit? And we came to the determination that essentially we were going to reach in their pocket once, and we were going to make a significant gross margin. But from then on out, we weren't going to be charging them for much of anything. After you get out of the warranty period, if you want us to come visit you, we will, and there's charges for that, and there's the expenses that go with it. But all the phone service is free, and it's just the way we established the business in the beginning. And the feedback we get from the customers is they appreciate it. They say, we know you make a lot of money, And we appreciate the fact that you don't take advantage of us, because we're the only ones in the world who do this.
Can I ask about the trading update? Specifically, what exactly you meant by political uncertainty?
Sure. So primarily how it relates to project starts. So what we've heard through our customers is that there was, in certain cases, back to the presidential election timeframe, end of kind of late 2016, certain projects were put on pause, pending outcome of the election. And once the election became clear and some of those projects restarted, it caused a lag effect in terms of how it impacts us. Our customers typically get involved in projects well after the project is kicked off. The concrete slab, floor placement is many, many months into the project. So that sort of pause caused some delays in terms of project starts that we've seen in early 2017. As far as the other sort of political uncertainty in terms of some of the legislative agenda, corporate tax reform, some of the infrastructure plans, those items for us are not critical to our performance in the near term. We view those as very positive longer term programs that will extend the runway in terms of just the future benefits in terms of the construction industry in the US. We are not direct beneficiaries of infrastructure programs. We benefit indirectly in that there will be some peripheral development, commercial development that surrounds the infrastructure projects, which is where our customers will take part. So we view that as very much a long-term, benefit backdrop.
Okay. The thing that I noticed was the difference in your descriptions of trading from the release you gave yesterday compared to what you said in March when you released your full year results, which was much more positive. And it seemed to me that it was something that had happened over the last 2 months. Your answer you just given suggests that actually it was kind of a lag from the election time. So is there something that you didn't see that coming, or
Well, when you've only had 2 months in the year, and they're usually the two slowest months,
Right.
we don't really draw any conclusions out of them. So it's kind of hard for us at that point to say it's better than or worse than, because you got a long way to go.
So it's not the case that January, February, March was okay, and then it's suddenly sort of April, May has been a bit quieter.
It's been up and down, to be honest with you. January was great. February was a little slow. March was great. April was good. May was slow. So we're sitting there trying to make sense out of all this. And, one of the things that help us make sense out of these things is that we talk to other construction equipment people. Everybody is saying the same thing. They're seeing slow months when we saw slow months. They're seeing better months when we saw better months. The financial people that finance construction equipment are calling us and saying, what do you guys know? To be very honest with you, everybody is not sure exactly what's going on. Everybody is hearing the same positive remarks. All of the customers are saying we've got more work than we know what to do, but we haven't got to the work yet. And realizing that, as I mentioned, this is a small customer. It's hard for him to go out and buy equipment if he hasn't been bringing in cash for the last month. So they need to be working constantly and generating profits to be able to continue to buy constantly. And remember, we're not talking about it being off a whole lot. We're talking about it flat. And when you look at a $400,000 piece of equipment, and you got 4 of those, you got $1.5 million. That's 3 or 4% growth right there. So we're dealing with very small volume.
Can I ask a little bit about the potential in Asia, and just trying to understand a little bit more as to why the take-up of your product, which has been around for quite a few years, has been so slow, and yet there's been an awful lot of construction in that part of the world, in terms of China and India, places like that. Is that something to do with the economics? Is it just labor just so cheap over there that your machinery really doesn't give them that economic benefit? Or I'm just trying to understand why the take-up has been so slow.
No, it's an excellent question. The biggest part of getting that to grow is getting them to adopt the specifications, them being the architects, the engineers, the building owners. And we have 3 people dedicated to going around putting on seminars. And we're just starting a process where we're going to take a review of all of those things we're doing to find out, are are we getting the desired results out of all of these seminars? Some of them have 100, 150 people at them. Because to your question, you would think that at this point in time there would have been greater adoption. And so we're looking at what it is we can do to improve it. But we know from history, I mean, when we came here in 1997, we did business in America and in the UK. And so we've grown around the world with the same process that we used in America and we used here in the UK. So we know the process works and it's been successful. We've just got to find out how we need to change our message in China to make it more impactful.
Could I follow up on that?
Sure.
Do you mean they're still doing the work with manual labour and boards?
Oh, absolutely.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we suspect we have less than 1% penetration. And by any statistics that you see, everybody has trouble relying on the statistics out of China. But China uses 53% of the world's concrete per year. The United States uses 3.5%. So when you look at the opportunity, even if China had zero growth, that's still an enormous amount of work that's done every day. So we don't see it being a marketplace problem. We're looking at ourselves and saying we need to do a better job in certain areas, and that's what we're constantly working on and constantly going to try and figure out. And we will. We always have.
What was the percentage in India?
India is about twice the US, so it's somewhere around 8% of the world's consumption.
Are you providing finance at all for selling your equipment?
So everywhere across the world, with the exception of China, there's third-party financing options available, particularly in the US and in Europe. It's not difficult to find a bank or a financing company to finance the equipment. The one exception is in China, where we do offer long-term financing. So we'll offer 12 to 24 months, up to 24 months, at 10 to 12% interest rate financing. And the reason we're able to do that in China is because we have a machine shut-off capability on our equipment that's tied to the payment schedule. So if payment isn't made, we won't provide the alphanumeric code necessary to reactivate the machine. So our experience with it, and we've had this program in place since Q4 of 2015, has been highly successful because it effectively prioritizes payment to us, and it validates the point that the machine, the laser screed, is the most important piece of equipment that the customer's business revolves around. So they absolutely need the machine to be working. So we've had very constructive experience with that. And the other good thing for us is only about a third of our deals in China take that financing. A third of our deals in China are cash paid in advance, and a third of our deals are usually 6-month or less terms. And in those cases, we'll also use the machine shut-off tied to that short-term financing.
Do you sell your equipment to equipment leasing companies?
No, the issue that the rental, the leasing companies, if you're going to lease out, if you were going to be a leasing company, and somebody comes to you and wants to lease a piece of equipment, a lot of cases they don't have a certified operator. So that means that you as the leasing company has to have a certified operator. And when you then go out to the job site, you've now taken responsibility for that slab. And by that I mean, when you put down a concrete slab, every building has what they call a benchmark, which the entire elevation of the building is measured off of. So you have to start by going to the benchmark and getting the elevation for the slab off of the benchmark, make sure you transfer it properly, and set up the laser equipment and set up the machine. And if something goes wrong, you're now responsible for that. And if you look at the things that the leasing companies do, they very rarely supply anything with an operator. The crane people will sometimes do that. But if you want to get a mini digger or a bulldozer or anything like that, everybody in their companies has some certified operators for them. But not a lot of companies have certified laser screed operators. So it's something that's never worked. The other thing we tried to do at one point in time, when we first invented the small line machines that wrote in the concrete, and they came to us and said, we went to them and talked to them. We said, this is a little bit easier to operate. You know, you just got to go. They said, we don't want anything that goes in wet concrete because we lease it out to our customer. He doesn't do a good job of cleaning it. And now he brings it back to the shop 24 hours later. Well, if you've ever seen concrete after it's set up, the way you get it off is with a sledgehammer. So now look at your piece of equipment. It's all damaged, and you're going to go and charge your good customer who rented from you $5,000 to sledgehammer it off. They said, we don't want that hassle. We just want simple. Give them the bulldozer, wash it off when you're done, bring it back.
Can you just clarify the financing? It's in dollars, yeah? It's not in renminbi.
Well, we sell. Our pricing is pegged to the dollar. So when we quote the sale, we'll basically translate it based on the current FX into the local currency, and then the transaction invoicing and the payments are all in the local currency. So the financing is based in the RMB. So basically, we have pretty limited FX risk as a result of it, because all of our sales are pegged to the dollar.
I hear you clearly when you're talking about peak sales in Europe in the past, adjusted for current pricing, would have been about $25 million.
Give or take, yeah.
And could you explain why, despite a 40% increase in Europe last year, it's only about a third of that peak?
So I mean, part of it has been just the slow pace of Europe kind of coming out of the financial crisis. So the U.S. has been kind of 2 to 3 years ahead of Europe in terms of recovery. The U.S. recovery was much more quicker, and so Europe has been, we've continued to see improvement, but the pace of the recovery has been accelerating over the past year and into this year. So, there is a very large installed base of equipment in Europe, so we see it as a big opportunity for a refresh of some of that installed equipment. But also since the time that Europe was at its previous peak, we've also launched a lot of new products that don't have a lot of penetration in the European market. So we view it as an opportunity. We're not sure where we get to, but we see it as a very big opportunity in terms of, as Europe continues to recover, as we get better penetration with some of our newer products, and we capture some of that refresh, we see a pretty good runway.
So it's been purely recession-related rather than withdrawing from any countries?
Yeah, I mean, we're still everywhere we were prior to the financial crisis. It's just a question of just recovery and activity level, and we're seeing positive signs in that regard.
If say you get to a point where the US picks up again, China really takes off, and in 2, 3, 4 years you're a $120 million business. Just like to understand the relationship between your OPEX and your top line growth. You mentioned people is the largest proportion of your costs. Is it pretty much a straight line relationship between revenue and OPEX?
Yeah, I think what the trajectory we're on as a business, we think equates to about a $2 to $2.5 million, on average, incremental OPEX investment annually, which is primarily, as you said, personnel driven. To the extent we have opportunities to accelerate that growth and pull in more, spend to increase headcount or make other organic type investments, we certainly will. But based on the current trajectory, we think that's kind of the comfortable pace to support the growth pattern that we see. And one of the challenges we have in terms of personnel is finding, recruiting the talent, especially on the commercial side of the business, meaning the sales and customer support, that are capable of filling the role. We can't necessarily poach from other competitors because there aren't people out there. So folks coming into the organization require to be trained, and we need to have people come offline to train the new people. So there's sort of a constraint inherent in the whole process.
And what would you say are the fixed costs in relation to your total overhead?
The fixed basis is fairly modest. I mean, I would, it's probably more like a 75-25 split, variable to fixed. That's a pretty high level estimate. But I mean, we're very much as you probably can see if you look through the history, able to adjust the cost structure of the organization through adjustments primarily to headcount pretty quickly.
So there should be a degree of operational gearing if you really
Absolutely.
start to get traction in some of these other markets.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Could I just ask something about the weather conditions that you mentioned?
It's been the rainiest winter ever in the United States. And so when it rains, you know, these buildings are all out in plots of land. And so when it rains, the job site gets totally soaked. And the heavy equipment, you know, the trucks that are delivering the concrete can't drive through the mud. They just sink down and get stuck. So a lot of times a job site will be shut down for 3, 4, 5 days while the job site has to dry out. And that way then the equipment can get in and go back to work on the building. So it's been rain from the rainy days, you know, in some places like New England and down in Texas, it rained for a week at a time. And then it takes another week, a week and a half to dry out. There's nothing happening in the construction industry. Typically the drying out phase, most of the job sites, you can start getting on in April, just in a normal winter from the rain and the snow. Now here we are in the beginning of June, and there's still a lot of places that they haven't been working to their normal pace. And that's part of why we're optimistic for the second half of the year, because it's normally when you get into June and the summer that all of the contractors are trying to get caught up. That's the other thing that happens to them. If you're a building owner and your building's been delayed 2 weeks, you're now saying to the subcontractors, I need it in a hurry. You got to do my job. Well, if you're a concrete contractor and you had 2 machines, but you've had 3 jobs and you haven't worked on any of them and you would expect it to be done with one, it creates a lot of problems for you. So does that make sense to you on what it means?
How much of your work is outside?
100%. Well, there's 2 types of things. The slabs are done 2 ways. Some of them are done in a building that will have a roof on them. And some are done where the slab is the first thing to be put down, and then the building's built off the slab. And it's just different parts of the country, different architects do things differently. Thank you all very much. Greatly appreciate your time.